Most shocking reveals on paternity court.
This is the only man that I know for all my life. He's been there for my kindergarten graduation, my 6th grade graduation. How many men do you know sit in a delivery room with their daughter when they're having a baby?
I don't care what your version was. I was far from a one-night stand.
Living across the street from each other?
Far from a one-night stand.
My wife's gonna be upset because I live across the street from somebody. I'm not dating him.
Oh, if I was your wife, I wouldn't trust you for nothing.
I don't think after...
We didn't have sex. It's just he's in the picture. We're all in Job Corps.
And
he knows, like, I'm pregnant. And that he's Mr. Casanova.
This case will leave you wondering if paternity court is actually real or scripted. But don't wonder. It's all real. All of it. Here we have siblings Miss Razor and Mr. Hunt, who are suing their parents, Mr. Jacobs and Ms. Hammonds. The siblings want a DNA test to see if Mr. Jacobs is truly their father. Now, why would they even want to do this? Well, a few weeks ago, they overheard their parents get into a fight. And during the fight, Mr. Jacobs tells Ms. Hammonds that the kids aren't even his anyway.
I started to hear a lot of noise in my mom's bedroom. He coming out the room, going to the kitchen saying, well, those ain't my kids anyway, so I was doing you a favor, and left out the door.
Mr. Jacobs doesn't deny that he said this, but he says that his wife simply got him angry, and that was a way of lashing back at her.
Your mother made a comment that really didn't sit too well with me, and it hurt me. You guys didn't hear the whole comment.
You know, I was just mad. You know I was mad. I just mad.
Yes, that statement may have been said out of anger, but that doesn't mean it's a lie. Both Ms. Razor and Mr. Hunt now have cause to believe that their parents are hiding something from them. And their mother isn't making it easy for them. Maybe he's not. Maybe.
Why did you make that statement? Why did you say what you said for him to say what he said?
Because maybe he's not your father, Precious.
What
maybe he's not.
What you mean?
Maybe he's not. I don't know. Maybe he's not.
Ms. Razor here is 26 and gets married in a few months, and her older brother is in his early 30s. The fact that they are just finding out that their father, who they've known all their life, may not be their father is very shocking. How could Ms. Hammond have done this to her kids?
Is there something that you need to tell me?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know who's the father. I just don't know. I don't know.
So explain the different last names.
It turns out that there is a huge possibility that Mr. Jacobs isn't the father of both kids. One possibility is a man named Tommy, who Ms. Razor and Mr. Hunt believe to be their mother's brother. However, he really wasn't her brother, and both of them had once been in a sexual relationship.
So you do admit that you had a sexual relationship with Mr. Farmer some 26 years ago?
Yes,
around the time Precious was conceived?
Yes.
You're admitting that here today?
Yes, ma'am.
This meant that someone Ms. Razor and Mr. Hunt always knew as an uncle could be their father. Can you just imagine how insane that is? And yes, Tommy is in court today. Ms. Razor eventually returns to the court and proceedings resume. Ms. Hammond has one more bombshell to drop. Tommy could be Ms. Razor's dad, but he isn't Mr. Hunt's dad because Ms. Hammond wasn't with him when Mr. Razor was conceived. Mr. Jacobs says he will still regard Mr. Hunt and Ms. Razor as his kids, despite all of this, and despite what the DNA test results have to say.
These are my children right here, regardless of what them papers say. You can read them, but at the end of the day, these are my children, and no matter what the results is, they're gonna respect their mother and they're gonna respect me. It's okay.
This case is about to get even crazier than you could ever imagine. First, let's see if Mr. Tommy Farmer is Miss Razor's father.
Mr. Farmer.
Yes.
You are not her father.
Oh my God! Oh.
But Ms. Razor isn't out of the woods yet. It's time to see if she's Mr. Jacobs' daughter, or if all of this DNA testing was just useless.
Mr. Jacobs are not.
Hopefully, Ms. Razor can go home happily with her family and look forward to her marriage. She's so clearly devastated by this news. This means that Ms. Hammond had 2 guesses for who Ms. Razor's father was, and she got both wrong. At this point, we've got to ask, does Ms. Hammond even know who Ms. Razor's father is?
Oh, he's my father. Please, I'm begging you, just talk to me.
I'm not sure, Precious. I'm not sure.
Just talk to me.
I'm not sure.
And we've still not checked if Mr. Jacobs is Mr. Hunt's father. If it turns out that Mr. Hunt is also not Mr. Jacobs' son, that means Mr. Jacobs' statement that both kids weren't his would be extremely correct. You may think, well, that's enough shock for one case on paternity court, but it isn't over.
Mr. Jacobs, you are not Hector's father.
After the court was adjourned, Judge Lauren invited all 4 members of the family to her chambers to figure out who's Mr. Hunt and Ms. Razor's true father. And the answer will shock you. And it's still not done. You could ask why Ms. Hammond would want Mr. Hunt tested when she knew Mr. Jacobs couldn't be his father. That's a sound question, and here is the solid answer.
I'm not his mother.
What? Are you serious? You're not his mother.
What do you mean?
He's my cousin's son. She died at childbirth.
This is probably the most shocking case to have ever been judged by Judge Lauren, and for good reason. On one side, we have Mr. Manser, who's the supposed father of 20-year-old Dylan. Mr. Manser has previously spent 5 years in prison for refusing to pay child support for Dylan, and is now in court claiming that Dylan's mother, Ms. Sayre, fabricated the DNA test results she used to prove in court that he is her child's father. But come on, guys, Ms. Sayre looks pretty innocent. She cannot do that, right? Right?
I'm here to explain that 12 hours of my life cost me 5 years in the Department of Corrections. She was a friend of my aunt. She was best friends with my aunt. We all lived in the same little community. I knew of her, I knew her, I've spoken to her. But as far as intimacy, we was together one time, and I hate to be crude, but it was a one-night stand.
Ms. Sayre says that's a lie and that she's far more than a one-night stand. But seriously, guys, does it even matter whether it was a one-night stand or a 10-night stand? It only takes one night to make a baby. So Mr. Manser better come up with something good, because this isn't going to cut it at all.
After all of this that has transpired, it really matters whether it was a one-night stand
Right.
or a
Does matter.
two-day tryst.
My biggest concern-
The point is you all had a sexual relationship
Right.
at some point.
But Mr. Manser says that throughout all of this, he's never been shown a shred of evidence that proves that he is Dylan's father. Ms. Sayre says that the evidence is a DNA test that she did after she gave birth to Dylan, but Mr. Manser says he has never been tested for a DNA test before, so he doesn't trust that result.
And I actually asked my public defender, where's the proof? I've yet to see proof that the child's mine. He said that they obtained my DNA through a sample that was already on file. That's what she's claimed
For a
this whole
daughter
time.
you didn't raise too.
So, that's right.
Anyway, Ms. Sayre is the picture of calmness. She's 100% certain that Mr. Manser is Dylan's father, and that's about that for her. The proof, of course, is the DNA test she has. But Mr. Manser says that Ms. Sayre has worked in a lab before, so he's pretty sure she could fake a DNA test if she wanted to.
But
Now, are
I
you
paid the ultimate
convinced he
price
is the
for that
father?
Yes,
possibility.
ma'am.
Why?
Because I have had a DNA test done, and I have the results right here. Would you like a
Wasn't I
copy of
supposed
it?
well, she's worked for lab pretty much for the last 20 years. I'd
Hold on.
question the validity of the results. I mean, she'd get those anyway.
Now this is where things get tricky. The fact that there is no social security number, no address, and basically no information that ties Mr. Manser to Dylan on Ms. Sayre DNA evidence. What this means is that no evidence establishes that Mr. Manser was present on the day the DNA sample was taken. It also means that Mr. Manser could potentially be correct. What if Ms. Sayre faked the DNA test just to get him to pay child support?
Most women want to shove that piece of paper in my face. I've yet to see this piece of paper. Any woman in this courtroom would want to prove or erase any of my doubt, that's for sure.
Anyway, one of Mr. Manser's other sons is here to testify. Let's see what he has to say. So one of Mr. Manser's sons says he's been a good dad, but Ms. Sayre insists that Mr. Manser has been an especially horrible dad to Dylan. Well, if he didn't think Dylan was his son and went to jail for 5 years for not paying his child support, then of course he would be a horrible dad to him. Fortunately, Dylan is also here to say his piece. It's obvious that the relationship between potential father and son is strained, and that's because Mr. Manser still doesn't think Dylan is his son. If Dylan turns out to be his son, he'll have a lot of work to do to mend that relationship. But if Dylan doesn't turn out to be his son, Mr. Manser will have to deal with the fact that he spent 5 years of his life being punished for not raising another man's kids. Well, it's time for the results. Let's see what they say.
In the case of Manser versus Sear, Mr. Manser, you are not
Oh, God.
his father.
Oh, man.
This case will blow your mind to smithereens. Here we have Ms. Jackson, who's done the incredible work of tracking Mr. Figures down after 20 years because she believes he's the father of her 20-year-old son, Daniel. Mr. Figures denies that he's Daniel's father because he insists that Ms. Jackson slept with a lot of men around the time Daniel was conceived. Daniel is in court today as part of a favor to his mom, as he says he isn't interested in finding out whether Mr. Figures is his father or not. Okay, love at first sight, infatuation, love at second and fourth sight. Can we just agree that it doesn't matter? What matters is whether Mr. Figures is Daniel's father, and that's why we are here today.
I look for love in all the wrong places. I met him like on maybe a Friday or Saturday night, and when I saw him with the long, curly black hair, he was just so, I was stunned.
We aren't here to find out who loved whom or who was infatuated with whom. That's irrelevant. Mr. Figures admits that he had a sexual relationship with Miss Jackson. He also admits that they didn't use protection. So it's clear that he has a case to answer here.
So, Mr. Figures, you acknowledge that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You did. Did you use protection? Were you guys using protection at the time?
Well, no, ma'am.
But first, Mr. Figures has a story to tell about the night Daniel was supposedly conceived. Hold up, hold up. Why is Miss Jackson grinning so hard? Is she flirting with him in front of Judge Lauren? Is she still smitten and infatuated by him? If I had to hunt down the father of my child after 20 long years, I definitely wouldn't be smiling with him in court. But Miss Jackson clearly has different ideas.
Sounds like love at first sight.
It was infatuation. I was never in love with him.
You weren't?
No.
So it was just infatuation?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so that's good you should say that. Then who else was you infatuated with?
Oh, things are getting feisty now. Mr. Figures says this is how he knows that Miss Jackson wasn't just sleeping with him. She was also sleeping with Mustafa. And that makes a lot of sense. Why would she call out Mustafa's name during intercourse?
I had another friend also. His name was
Mustafa.
She got a good memory. So, getting into the moment of...
The moment.
Yeah. She calls my name twice. Third time, she called his name.
Oh!
Anyway, Miss Jackson says she doesn't remember this and that Mr. Figures is lying. But it gets even more interesting. Mr. Figures says Miss Jackson was also sleeping with the guy who was there for her during her pregnancy. Mr. Figures says this is a lie and he never actually said that. But he then changes his mind and says he did say that, and that the guy in question told him he would raise Daniel. If someone that your baby's mother is close to says that they would raise your kids for you, you're probably at liberty to think something strange is afoot. And that's exactly what Mr. Figures thought.
So you're saying when that happened, you thought to yourself, oh, maybe she's with the other guy too.
That's a possibility. I mean, she called his name.
Mr. Figures also claims that Miss Jackson was having intercourse with him and the other guy at the same time. This gets Miss Jackson agitated and she starts crying. Her son starts crying too, and at this point, you've got to start thinking of Mr. Figures as the worst person in the world.
If this man, because I can get in contact with him at any time, if he knew that this was his child, why would I be doing this after 20 years? If you look at my son and look at this man, there's no way in God's green earth that anybody could ever think that this other man is his.
This is just so sad to see. It's clear that Daniel is in a lot of emotional pain and just wants to get all of this done with. He tells the court that he doesn't really care about the test results and he's just here to support his mother. He's already an adult, and he argues that he doesn't need a father anymore and he's just going to roll with the punches.
We don't talk about this at all in my house. That's why I don't talk about it. I don't think about it. The only person I really see as my father, because he's been there, is my youngest brother and father, because I have memories with him. Other than that, I don't really care.
Listen, baby.
At this point, Daniel and his mom can't keep themselves together. But I've got a serious question for you. Look at that screen grab. Do you think Daniel looks like Mr. Figures? If you were to place a bet right now, who would you say is Daniel's father? Mr. Figures or another random man? Make your decision now because we are going to take a look at the DNA test results and it's going to astound you.
Mr. Figures, you are not the father.
Oh my God.